Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review The Masked Singer Season 5, Episode 11. Just because I'm stubbornly going to go via the Hulu episode count rather than the actual show episode count. So hopefully someone will find this episode eventually, and that'll be perfectly fine. I had just realized that I had completely forgotten that I didn't do a thumbnail for this video, so I have to make one of those after this video is done. So, really, a lot of people will know full well that I would ultimately say, hey, this is basically a review of people that I've already kind of made my consensuses on. If anything, there might be switches and differences of opinion, just because reasonably judges could make a left field consensus where I have to just go, sounds about right? So, going into here, we ended up having two characters get eliminated tonight, and I'm sure a lot of people, like, the pen is dropping. They're like, oh my god, two people got eliminated tonight? I hope it wasn't my favorite. Well, in all actuality, with this show, especially this episode, I'm like, wait a minute. Do these masked singers know that it's, like, do they know it's Christmas time? Do they know it's close to the finale? Honestly, I think for the most point, we end up having a lot of these characters just still doing quite a bit of songs that are just to get them by through an episode. I'm like, dude, you should be, like, bringing the house down. You should be busting out something. Excuse me, I have a little bit of a hickle in my chickle. You should be doing something that makes people just cry their eyes out and just and melt their faces off and, like, in all kinds of horrific, like, things. Like, you should be just, like, going like, man, like, you know what? I'm so glad that you are here into the finale. Because, no, we end up having a lot of people that are obviously just going and just phoning it in, to be brutally honest. Even Cloodle-Doo, he's really just probably the guy that phones it in more than anybody else does in this episode, with his butt shaking and his cool performance and his otherwise getting unmasked at the end of this episode. And plus also, we ended up having it to where reasonably, I honestly and truly believe that some judges just are like, huh? Within this episode? How could you not immediately just be hearing a person's voice and just immediately just say, like, yeah, it is that person. But then again, it took them 12 years to realize that quite possibly Nick Lachey could be the Piglet. It took them 12 years. Like, they never picked Daughtry as the Rottweiler. They never picked him. And I'm just so severely irritated by that. To this day. Sorry if I spoiled another season for somebody, but I'm still bothered by that. It's so annoying. It's so, like, dude, like, I heard it, like, right off the bat. I'm like, oh, that's so-and-so. And then Unmasked, I'm like, oh, yeah, it is. So, yeah, like, it's easy. But anyways, let's go on to the choices. Let's get this a wrap because hickle in my chickle. But reasonably, this is mostly a review. Let's have fun with this. So, the Yeti ended up singing a song called Celebration. Let me say that again. The Yeti had sang a song called Celebration by Kool and the Gang. Why? Honestly, why? This song wasn't actually popping to me. This song wasn't like, I was like, man, like, I think that this song is gonna get this guy into the finale. No. Immediately I'm like, okay, well, the Yeti is just like, well, obviously, I'm gonna probably get voted off pretty soon, so I might as well just, just not put forth a real legitimate effort. He had put in so much effort into all of his other songs, even though there was ones that I did not like. This one just felt like, dude, I just want to go home. That's honestly what this felt like it was. Or that this person quite possibly knew they were going home, so they just kind of put in this kind of effort, in all honesty. I'm sorry, Celebration is not a is not a show winning song. I'm sorry. I don't get, like, maybe there was like eventually this Yeti who had just started just running out of music and that could happen. But still, like, I'm sorry, we ended up having so many characters who ended up doing amazing performances throughout this entire season, and we have a very lackluster season, to be brutally honest. I am just so, for the most point, disappointed of the season. It's just like, man, there's just a lot of people just phoning these performances in, just like, well, yeah, like, because I knew I was gonna get eliminated. I know I was not going to make it to the finale, and so I just put in this effort, because it honestly just feels like that. So really, the Yeti, I have made the consensus so far that it's still Omarion. And by the end of the episode, you will be spoiled of who this actually is. Reasonably, also, if the Yeti had not gone home as well, we also have Cloodle Doo to haggle with in this episode. We end up having him, who ends up taking off his thing called a mask, and he had been eliminated as well. So the guy that goes on here and does an amazing performance, especially that with that whole butt shaking thing. Uh, it's a joke. It's hilarious. And I just keep drilling that in that he's the only mass singer individual to do a little butt shaking. If I haven't seen that in any other mass singer before. He sold us with the rump maker, the butt quaker. You know what I'm saying? Uh, so going into this, just Omarion is still my choice for the Yeti, and you'll see by the end of the episode if I am incorrect or correct, or maybe off to the side, just going like, hmm. Anyways, moving on. So we have the Black Swan that I am still freaking confused on who this person is, but at this point in time, I just don't think it matters who this person is. Like, dude, I have pretty much, like, smoked this entire season. If I get this character wrong, oh man, am I just gonna just tear up because of the disappointment that I'm going to have. Here is the thing about this Black Swan. So, in the clue package for this episode, we had mentioned that there was seemingly a maple leaf in Black Swan's clue package. So immediately Robin Thicke is like, oh, Canadians. Because if anything, we end up having Robin Thicke, who had mentioned that his father had mentioned that Canadians, Robin, you gotta know those Canadians. And so we end up having it to where Robin Thicke is making the consensus of who this is. And immediately I'm just like, you know what? Bashal all the Canadian stuff. Like, I'm still just going to make my consensus anyways, just because I can. So we end up having the Black Swan doing the performance of Tequila. And I'm just like, like, Black Swan is just taking songs and doing her variation on it, and I guess I can applaud her for that, because it seems like she is approaching this as a much more, like, challenge kind of thing, that she is not just going to karaoke and phone it in. Like, she's trying to do her own variations of the song, which I applaud her for that. But, or him, maybe it's a him, you never know. Wouldn't that be a surprising factor if we end up having the Black Swan being unmasked and it's a man the entire time? I'm waiting for that to happen, where we're just assuming or assessing it's a woman this entire time, and it's going to be the whole, like, seal debacle, where all of a sudden we're like, oh my god, it's a man, because of course it would be, because it sounds like frickin' Seal. Good god. But anyways, here's my way of justifying this. So, Robin Thicke had said Carly Hansen. I believe that's her name. I could be ill pronouncing that, but I don't care. It seems like Robin Thicke had chosen this honestly out of left field, and I don't know if this is sounding all justifiably right or not. really, I would say quite possibly this still could be Vanessa Hutchins, or Vanessa Hutchin. Yeah, uh, we had her who had just finished filming in Canada for some movie. So, anyways, we could have it to where reasonably Vanessa could be squeaking by to otherwise go and do this show because maybe she's not in 100% of the Canadian movie or whatever she's in. Canadians, Robin, Canadians. But if anything, really, I'm still making the consensus of JoJo just because I can. Just because, like, the clue package is from before kind of led me to this journey, and I don't want to give up on JoJo. And more than likely, this character may get unmasked, and it might not be anybody that anybody could have known. And I'm like, oh yeah, she's a famous Canadian actress or something. And I'm like, huh? I don't know exactly where the Canadian thing goes into, but really, yeah, we're just gonna have to make the consensus of who this person is. But then at the end of the day, maybe we're gonna be completely wrong, and I just like to me, I'm just like, dude, oh well, I'm gonna start crying if I get this incorrect. Out of all the people that I've gotten within the season because knowledge. So moving on. We end up having the Chameleon, who is to go on to perform. Oh boy. Oh boy. That's what he's performed. Oh boy by Cameron. Or Cameron. So here's the thing. I am now making the consensus that the Chameleon is going to win this season. Bizarrely. I know a lot of people are just like, dude, there's no way. I have seen shock and awe go on to these shows. So I am immediately thinking that Chameleon is going to win this season. Because here's the thing. We end up having the guy from Hootie and the Blowfish mentioning how challenging rapping really is, to where I think that that is going to push Chameleon to just win this show because of how complicated rapping really is. And I do apologize that I mentioned that he's just the lead singer of Hootie and the Blowfish. He freaking is. Rucker, I think is his name, the lead singer from Hootie. He's Hootie. I know he hates hearing that, and I know he hates people just talking about Hootie and the Blowfish, but ka-ching, ka-ching, because maybe people are going to be like, I don't know who Hootie and the Blowfish is. I need to go into iTunes and check out some Hootie and the Blowfish, and then I'm going to immediately just going to go, you know what? I really like this Hootie guy. This ka-ching in your wallet there, buddy. Like, you shouldn't be, like, upset about reasonably money in your wallet, buddy. Money in your wallet. So, going on in here, I'm making the bizarrest consensus that Chameleon is going to win this season because I thought that he should have been eliminated numerous episodes ago. And in all honesty, it has nothing to do with who I think it is. No, I just think that reasonably, like, I think the quality of this show has sunk down so far that reasonably it could be anyone's game at this point to eventually win this show. Like, that's how bad things actually are, to where nobody is really, like, busting out any Whitney Houstons or really just giving us an overly, like, best performance of this season kind of quality or best performance of this show kind of quality, which we are fairly used to in other seasons. To where very few times I've even seen any of these judges actually burst out in tears, with the exception of Nicole, because she'll just cry because it's Tuesday. I get so invested in all these Masked Singer people. Oh my god. Oh. They put out a very emotional clue package, and I'm just gonna have to cry. That's not how Nicole sounds, but I don't know. We end up having it to where both, a lot of times, Jenny and Nicole are reasonably criers, and that's okay. Like reasonably, I would probably cry too if I would just be like disappointed in the season, because it's like, man, like they should be hitting it strong in this season, and I'm just like, no, they're not. They're just not. But if anything, I haven't made a true consensus of who this person is, but I guess I'm just going to keep going along with the same guess that I've been going on to for I don't know how long, just because it's just easy at this point. So if I'm completely off and or wrong, then by golly, it is with it what it is. So let's move on. So that Piglet man dude person, half man, half pig, half yodeler. He looks like he has some like Swedish gob on him. He has some Swedish. He's got the freaking suspenders. I'm waiting for him to bust out some Swedish song or something. Just bust out that Swedish. Come on, come on, Piglet. Go ahead and do it. So they got like bratwurst and like Swedish things, right? Like that's like a important food for Swedish people, right? Maybe? No? If you're Swedish, let me know in the comments below. But if anything, we end up having, of course, the Piglet who is to perform Bruises by Louis Capaldi. Never heard of this song in my life, but you know what? Via this episode, I would say that this is a really good song compared to everyone else's song that has been performed this night. If anything, I would honestly say overall, I am actually rooting for Piglet, sadly enough, just because I feel overall for this entire season, Piglet has had some good performances compared to everyone else. I say that because nobody is really busting out or busting a move or whichever. Nobody has really gone out of their way to actually give us something interesting. But again, even though in all actuality, this is probably going to be the best performance-wise character overall this season, I don't know that he's actually going to win this season, because I still think that bizarrely in the back of my mind, Chameleon is just going to win this season, because that's just bizarrely how this season has to break down, is just like bizarrely Chameleon is just going to just win this whole thing. And I'm just going to be like, what? Like, what? Like, we're going to have like the Piglet bust out a Whitney Houston song and then just like have everyone like in the crowd just crying and tears and all kinds of things, and everyone's gonna get severely emotional, and there's not gonna be a dry eye in the room, but then everybody is just gonna be like, well, you know what, that was great and all, but that Chameleon though. That Chameleon guy, though, I just, let me hit the button to get that Chameleon guy to just win the show. So, really, we have it to where my consensus is still Nick Lachey. I think really they have really tried to consistently try to push on people that this is probably Drew Lachey, that it's actually Nick Lachey's brother. And so I think a lot of people will make that consensus as well. But a lot of people are also saying, dude, this is obviously Nick Lachey now. Like, come on. Like, it only took you like 12 years to come up with that consensus. And so, like, just verify it now that it's Nick Lachey. Just have this man just take off his mask, chuck it in the air, and just immediately just be like, dude, I got this one correct. It's easy to just say that. So, moving on. So we had this Rooster-like character come up in here and just hijack the show. He's just like, you know what? Like, I feel like singing tonight for once. And you know what? I appreciate a Rooster who is willing to just bust a move. Really, within this episode, we end up having, of course, this Cloodle Doodly Doo, Doodly Doodly character who is to bust out a song called Return of the Mac by Mark Morrison. Okay, sure. Really, we have it to where I think this performance of this Rooster feller was probably the most fun performance that I've probably seen this season. Really, also, I think that the judges are also just dumb. I honestly think that the judges are just kind of just sometimes a little bit of because why wouldn't you have whatever? All right. But anyways, so Cloodly doodly. So a lot of people were making consensuses within the season that it's Joel McHale because they never heard him sing a tune in his life. Uh, Sadly enough, because evidently they have never watched a show called Community or seen what Joel McHale could do at any point in time. He could really belt it. I was making the consensus that this was Joel McHale the entire time. Um, because really I'm just that good at just judging people for the most point. But anyways, I also had heard within one episode that Donnie Wahlberg was asking these mass singers questions. You can obviously hear his voice because I've watched numerous episodes of Blue Bloods. Believe me, I've watched so many episodes of Blue Bloods that I'm just like, man, I'm just kind of tired of watching Blue Bloods. But it is what it is because I guess really when hearing Donnie Wahlberg's thing called The Voice within some kind of clue package of one episode, immediately I was like, well, it's obviously going to be Donnie Wahlberg as the Rooster. Kind of obvious. But I was thinking, well, like also with this performance, I'm like, I kind of nailed it to the fact that I'm like, well, it has to be Donnie Wahlberg. It can't be anyone else. And so really we end up having also that the Rooster was to give the clue to Ken that he and him had worked together in some animal movie. And immediately we end up having Ken who's like, well, gee, golly, you know what? The only one movie that I've ever done that involves animals was Zookeeper, and so I'm immediately thinking that this is Kevin Smith, or no, Kevin James, because I always get those confused, and so does everyone else in this community. Kevin James, the Paul Blart Mark Mall Cop guy. So reasonably, I'm like, why would Kevin James go out of his way to get at Ken and or any of these judges, like as if like bizarrely Kevin James has had this like muhaha history of these people. Like he doesn't know any of these people. He doesn't know any of these people, but everybody made the consensus that it's probably Kevin James from King of Queens, and I'm like, this seems out of like far left field to even talk about Kevin James, but whatever. Because reasonably, I was assuming or assessing, I've seen movie Zookeeper. I know who's all actually in that film. Because even like Ken Jeong like only worked with certain people on that film, so it's perfectly okay if Ken Jeong doesn't know every single extra and whichever, like, you know how much crap that he has to remember and memorize while doing an acting gig that more than likely his life just becomes a blur at some point in time, and you know how many movie and show projects that he's done. Like, good God, man, like if I could even remember half of the things that I've seen Ken Jeong do fairly much more recently, then yeah, I'm sure life just easily becomes a blur for Ken, and I can understand if he doesn't exactly know who is all in a movie with him because he's done so freaking many of them. But here is the thing. So we end up having, my consensus also could have been with this Rooster, I was clearly thinking that I'm like, you know what? I actually think that this Rooster character could be Akon. I think that this Rooster character is Akon. I think that's actually right. You know what? I should switch Donnie Wahlberg and I should go with Akon for reasons. Because you know what? Jenny McCarthy had made this guess, and I was like, wow, Jenny, like, that actually sounds like the most reasonable guess in my entire life. Here is also some interesting things that we got from the clue package of the Rooster. At some point, we end up having a reference to a movie that some people might be familiar with called Jigsaw. Granted, Donnie, I believe, was not actually in the movie Jigsaw because he wasn't, because I've seen that movie. But we end up having a character named Jigsaw who is actually in a, wouldn't you think of knowing it, a Saw movie that some Wahlburger guy, dude, person is in. But anyways, some people might have missed that because it's a fairly hard clue to catch, and so on and so forth. So, recently now is about that time for us to now spoil who these people are. If anything, pretty much after the spoilers, we're going to talk about consensuses in whichever and decisions that we've made. More than likely horrifying ones that we're going to just start to cry and to say, man, the season is not going the way I wanted it to. Or really, we're just going to have this huzzah-like moment and I'm just going to leave here just going like, yeah, like, I guess that I'm just like that kind of whichever. Anyways, so now that we've gotten all of the people under the picks, under the wraps, under the whatevers, really, I thought it was hilarious. That whole Akon thing is just like, it's freaking hilarious. So it's time to go into the spoiler territory of this episode to let everybody know who actually was unmasked with these people. So if you guys do not want to know who these people are at the end of the day, it's time for you to go out of your way to watch this on Hulu, go on YouTube, and go ahead and just watch everything and just be like, wow, this season just isn't as up to par as other seasons have been. Kind of a bummer. Kind of a real just like a Mary Sue of seasons, to be brutally honest. So with that said, it is now time to spoil who these people are right now. So we end up having the Yeti, who of course is this character called Omarion. And plus, really, once we got to the whole, like, P. Diddy, P. Daddle, P. Did a little kind of clue package, I was immediately just at that point, I'm like, well, I think we can kind of seal the deal that it's Omarion right now. And then, reasonably, we have this character unmasked. Surefire enough, it's Omarion. I'm like, wow, what a giant surprise. But if anyways, so we end up having Cloodle-Doo get unmasked, and we end up having it being of any person, we end up having it be Donnie Wahlberg, which I was like, wow, shocker there. Man, I was so surprised that it was Donnie Wahlberg, man, because really I was just like, I couldn't have thought in a million years that it was Donnie Wahlberg. And evidently his wife couldn't either. You know how many times we would have a boy bander come in here and really we have it to where like Jenny is like, baby, is that you? And so really Jenny picking Akon is the most hilarious thing because we immediately have it to where Jenny just like immediately when she sees that it's Donnie, we end up having her just falling over and in just utter surprise. And so we end up having Donnie, who obviously was just like, you know what, like I did this show for like for Jenny, and I did it for all like the fans that we have, and everything like that, all the new Kids on the Block fans, and like he completely forgot about the Blue Bloods fans that watch Blue Bloods like consistently. I kind of watch it like off to the side because I would otherwise just be watching a bunch of other new content that I have to kind of bust out every single day. Um, but yeah, Donnie Wahlberg was unmasked as the Rooster, and really, I think once he sang, that kind of nailed the sixth sense senses of which that I have about this person. And so, really, there was no dream catcher that I could have had in my mind to think that this was anybody else but Donnie Wahlberg. And so, really, uh, it's kind of bizarre to have seen and or have saw uh, Jenny just not even picking her own husband. And so I was just baffled by that. And but then again, like you would have thought, like Jenny is probably so busy, and supposedly Donnie is so busy that like him sneaking around and probably having to probably say that he's really busy with some kind of show or whichever. I guess Jenny could have just easily bought that. But then again, also with Jenny having this thing called a golden ear, people were basically just like, dude, it's time to throw that in the trash right now. It's time to throw that in the trash right now. Like, how is it that, like, I guess with time she would have probably easily picked it to be her husband, but really, we end up having Jenny with egg on her face, just going like, yeah, I can't believe that I couldn't even pick out that, like, this was my husband. And it's like, yeah, mistakes could be easily made. And so reasonably with only one good solid performance under the belt, yeah, it's hard. But then again, I easily knew. Plus, I easily knew that Donnie was in Zookeeper, and Ken immediately said Kevin James. Um, to where really Donnie was saying, it's like, well, thank God that Ken went another direction with the whole Zookeeper thing. Because reasonably, like Donnie, I guess maybe was sweating that about the whole animal clue, because Ken had only been in one movie dealing with animals. But anyways, yeah, and immediately we end up having Ken, who's like, yeah, I did work with you in Zookeeper. Yeah, I did do that movie. Yeah, and Donnie Wahlberg was the villain of that movie. Yeah, because heaven forbid, I've watched a bajillion films, but I still knew that Donnie was in this Zookeeper movie, as well as any number of other movies that I just referenced and or mentioned. Him being in Dreamcatchers, or him being in the Saw franchise, or him being in Blue Bloods, or any number of other things, because I've seen him consistently doing projects which were really interesting. So, with that said, yeah, another basically season under the belt for me. If it wasn't making that consensus already, there's only very few people left. I could make a ton of mistakes right now and just have left wing answers, and it won't matter at this point. Because reasonably, it's just like, well, like, hopefully this person is not incorrect and or wrong. So I think the following season, I am going to try my best to get 100% of the season correct. I'm going to try my best to try and do that, because I don't think that I have had a 100% perfect season. Um, Plus, with them throwing in like characters like Kermit the Frog in this show, immediately just makes this show a lot harder. And so really it's just the fact of like, well, like mistakes are going to get made, and reasonably this show is really like is still a fun show, but I just think that for the most point just the quality has really dipped. But if anyways, this season is almost over. We're going to see at the end of the day who is going to be on top. And so yeah, I am going to get out of here. Goodbye everybody. Goodbye everybody.